Okay. Hey, welcome to the coldest of all cold openings, everyone. This is the ComicBase live stream. We had some special, really exciting technical foo happen right before we hit the stream here. I think it's only the third stream in all the time we've done this where we've actually started late. But I was trying to actually export some video right beforehand, and it did not work out. So, anyway, and apparently we're now streaming a macro right now, which I hope stops right about now. Okay, welcome to the best produced show on the internet. No fault at all to your fabulous mod who's in the house, Mr. Greg Hecht. Say hi to people before we get going here. This is actually going to be kind of a special one here. I'm going to give you a behind-the-scenes tour of my comic collection and talk about our huge process we had of how do you rebalance when you have 57,000 comic books and you need to reshuffle the whole bloody thing? How do you make that happen? We're going to be talking about that on this show, and whatever else is on people's minds. So anyway, let's see here. A question all requiring minds to know: are the photos in today's graphics showing Pete's actual collection? That is actually true. That is us doing the thing, and I'll be talking more about if I can get my switcher to come up. So give me just a moment here. I'm gonna shut down DaVinci because that is clearly not going to happen this time out. And let's get the media pool up there. What happened right before showtime is I had a UPS that just started throwing an alarm, and right at showtime it was going beep, and then I had to shut the whole works down right before we went live. So that was a mess. I do apologize, guys, and hopefully we'll make this better. All right, so let me see here. Say hi to Steve Dasner, Mike Beam in the house from Pacific Northwest, and looks like the weather is ameliorating for everybody. Department of Comics joining us from Florida. Welcome, and yes, the video diary of the rebuilding of Pete's comic book collection. Yeah, we get right into it. Chris Purcell from Philadelphia, Rob Weinberg out there. And Department of Comics in the house, Mike Beam as well, I think we mentioned, and a lot of discussion about stuff. I'm actually just going to get right into it. So let me draw a picture of kind of some of the things that we were doing here. So if you guys didn't know, I've got some 57,000 comic books and counting in my personal collection, and they are, the nice stuff is stored inside in Mylar and babied and treated very, very well. But the vast majority of it is just regular old stuff. How did I get it? It turns out when we started doing ComicBase version 10.0, and the lead up to that one, we signed on for way back ago, so some 27 years ago. God help us. No, I'm sorry, 16, 17 years ago. I can do math. Yeah. What we decided we were going to do prior to that point in ComicBase's life, we came out like a price guide would come out. We would basically index all year long and do our things and build the program. And then we would put out a new version of the program and we would import your version into it. And we thought, well, that's pretty good. We'll see what we can do to match everything up. But then we decided, things are hitting far too fast. This was, it must have been right around 2000 or so. 2000, 2002, things are coming out too fast. The comic market's really speeding up. Let's do something crazy. And our plan was we're going to actually open our own Diamond account, and we're going to start ordering one of every regular comic book that comes out. And we'll start putting that into the comic book database every week as we go. And we're going to push out updates over this internet thing that was kind of, all the bee's knees at the time. People were starting to think maybe this isn't just a flash in the pan and it might amount to something. And so we were going to do that. And as a result, my little 6,000 issue comic collection started growing quite large. And it was not until a few years later when we invented this thing called Atomic Avenue to help me sell some of it. But over the years, the idea of buying one of everything for 20 some years or so at this point has meant that I now have 57,000 comic books in my collection. It probably would have been, 150, 200,000 if we hadn't been selling out things that we were done with on Atomic Avenue. So, thank God for that. But it's still a lot of books to manage, and I had a problem. My problem is, other than the fact that I need to have 60 linear feet of wall space, basically 6 feet tall, to have the drawer boxes to store all this stuff, which definitely made shopping for offices in San Jose kind of interesting. We had to find, we need one with like a storage wall that's just completely blank for 60 feet, and then we need a certain amount of offices for people to do their business in. But it was definitely a highlight of every feature that we ever did when we were looking for offices. We actually, when we were shopping for offices, we actually laid out all of our space needs for all the major pieces of gear, wide format printers and things like that, in Lego. Turns out Lego's a wonderful way if you want to design offices of doing a scale model building. So basically just do it at the scale of 1 centimeter, or which is to say one Lego peg equals 6 inches, and you can quite easily model any office space you want. When you're all done, you actually have kind of a conversation piece, because you have to decide whose minifig is going to be Batman and such. Anyway. But in the past, we'd had all the collection. It was in beautiful air-conditioned space, ranged wall to wall, very easy to get to the filing, and everything worked great. And that worked terrific until I moved out to Tennessee, because I decided at some point I got tired of being a small businessman in California and putting up with all the fun which is to run a small business in California. I said, wait a minute. My business basically moves wherever I need it to move. If I can have my people do their work on the interwebs, we basically, if we can break down our server rack and put that into Amazon's cloud or so forth, then my guys could work from anywhere. I can move to someplace, where the, business environment's a little bit more sane and, and so forth, a little bit better for my family. And I decided I'm going to move out to Tennessee. And that was great. Did that 9 years ago now, coming right up on that anniversary. And I've really enjoyed it, with one exception. The exception, well, two exceptions. The weather is not all that. If you've lived in California, it kind of doesn't get better from a weather standpoint on Earth. Maybe, Tuscany. But if you're not, but other than that, it's the weather. California wins. So let's just stipulate. But the other thing that is not great about where I'm at right now is I started having massive problems with the filings of the comic books. Is that all the drawer boxes, all the filing system that had worked so very well for really over a decade back in San Jose started just falling apart. When I put it down in San Jose, and in Tennessee. Now, originally, what happened is the boxes would start collapsing in themselves. It was impossible to pull out drawers and so forth, and it just degraded. And I thought, okay, all right, clearly things got banged up in the move, and so we'll buy a bunch of new drawer boxes. We'll take everything out of the garage. We'll reset the whole thing, refit it, and it'll be fine. We did that, and we also thought at the time, well, the humidity is not a good thing, so we'll work on dehumidifying the whole thing, because humidity probably is not doing good things for either the comic books or the boxes they're in. We did that, and it turned out that was not it. And so over time, we went up with the stacks kind of, impinging again on the bottom boxes would fall in, and it was no good. And I'm really getting frustrated at this point, because it's a hell of a lot of work to do the shuffling. But it was like, well, what's the deal? And so I talked to Rich over at the Collection Drawer Company. Rich is a really good guy. CollectionDrawer.com, by the way, if you're interested. And I ran into him at the Charlotte Comic Convention, and I told hom my woes. I'd been one of the very first customers of drawer boxes, and I got some of the very first models, and I've been with him through the years and so forth. Is our collection expanded, or as we needed to redo some things? And he said, "Well, is your garage level?" And I thought, well, I think it's level. I mean, it doesn't feel like it slopes down, but I thought, well, maybe I should put a level on the floor. And so I went out and bought myself a digital level. And to my somewhat concern, it came up that my garage floor had an up to point, you measure it at different points on the floor, but it had up to a 0.7 degree slope to it, which you say 0.7 degrees. no big deal, right? But then you do a little math on that, and it figures out that over a 22-foot long garage door, a 0.7 degree slope indicates a drop off of some 3 inches. And so that was bad. So basically, what it meant is that I was stacking up boxes on a floor that were, basically always going to be at an angle. And at an angle, and the shearing force of cardboard boxes is not a good thing. And so that's why the things were collapsing. So I undertook a project this last weekend, planned it out for quite a while, to level up parts of my garage floor in order to set everything right, and to try to build essentially platforms for all the comic boxes to sit on, to level everything up, fix the whole thing, and so forth. I'm going to show you some project photos of what that looks like, and what was involved with all that. And then I'm going to run you through a video. I actually shot a vertical video. This is a live stream first for what the end results look like, and we'll talk about that. So first of all, let me show you what it was that we were doing. So, here, what we were doing essentially, we're building these platforms. Let me go and put this on the main stream there. So the idea, and this is my garage shot from the inside. And what we were doing is we were building these planks down here. These are 4x4s, which are planked with 3/4 inch plywood, and they run the length of the garage. This is sort of a center library style aisle on the whole thing, and the goal is to get, I can make this work. Just got dragged there a while. The goal here is to do what we did here, which is to get a 0.00 degree level. And in order to achieve that, basically, and this is over an 8-foot span, I basically had to shim this up to the extent of putting a full 3/4 inch piece of plywood underneath it at this end, as well as some shims, and then continue the process forward, and then build out down the road as we went, in order to build these construction platforms. Now, okay, so fine, it's a little weekend project, no big deal, right? Well, what's involved with making that happen? And the answer was, of course, I needed to move everything out of the garage. Moving everything out of the garage was a bit of a project. Specifically, we had 320 comic boxes that needed to go. To move 320 comic boxes out of the garage, so if you actually work it out, each of these comic boxes is about 50 pounds, and they need to be moved out, and then they need to be fixed up and rebalanced, and the platforms need to be built and so forth, and then they need to be moved back in. So basically, that's 8 tons that needs to be lifted and then put back. I did the first 100 by myself. I basically did the set that was along the far wall, just as a proof as to whether or not the concept had any merit to it whatsoever. And during that day, and I wish I'd taken a screenshot of it, I set my second best Fitbit personal record for the number of steps, the number of zone minutes, and the number of calories burned during the day. It was like 6,200 calories just for my little self, on the whole thing. It was absolutely psychotic, because basically what you're doing is you're doing 150-pound lifts and carries, followed by a lot of shuffling around and rebalancing boxes, followed by another 100-pound lifts and carries to get the stuff back into the racks. So it was kind of involved. And then we had to also do this in Tennessee, which meant that we had to worry about rain. So when it came time to do the second set of projects on the whole thing, I did recruit some help on the whole thing. That's my wife and some of the help. I'm the one holding the camera right now. And the idea is that we got started at like 7 or 8 in the morning. We lifted everything out of the garage. We came back in here. We built the platforms that we were going to do, leveled all those up, fixed up any boxes, and then loaded the whole damn thing back in. Now, let's talk about the drawer boxes a little bit, because these are kind of fun. So these are the old drawer boxes, and honestly, they're most of the new ones as well. What the heck are you looking at here? So what a drawer box is it's a heavy-duty cardboard shell, is what they call the outer bit, and you can actually link several of them together, which is when you see them in clumps, those are the ones that are linked together. Basically, these things act as drawers, like filing drawers, and then you slide the boxes themselves, the comic boxes, into them. These are all the old ones that were pulled out, and then we kind of inspected them, saw which ones were completely degraded, got rid of as many of them as we could. I bought like 20 new shells and 40 new drawers to go along with the project. Just so we could, freshen up some of the ones that completely collapsed over the years, to the point where they were just no longer usable for what they were doing. Because what happens is if enough weight gets on these guys and they start bowing in on the sides, they bend in and they can no longer, you can no longer slide the comic drawer out smoothly. It winds up ruining the drawer. So especially during COVID, when we were selling way more comic books than people were putting in, I think everyone was, we wound up just mothballing a bunch of our capacity. Probably about 5 to 8% of our capacity was just, we were just sticking random objects in there, like tackle boxes and stuff, because we couldn't use them as drawer boxes anymore. So they were just basically empty. Well, anyway, so we went through this entire crazy project, and at the end of the day, come 5 o'clock, you had 4 very tired people, but we had a drawer that was once a filing system that was once again working. It was actually thank very much to the helpers and everyone who pitched in on the whole thing. We also managed to take any boxes that were getting overly full and slide them down to the next line, integrate some new boxes into the whole thing, relabel everything as far as what was in each box, and then put the whole dang thing back. And so now filing is a freaking joy comparatively. And so now I'm going to try doing something I've never done before. Is I'm actually going to give you a tour of my garage, and let's see if this works. So brace yourselves here. I'm going to see if I can find the right video clip, and I'm going to present the bit here. Apologize, I don't have the fancy schmancy vertical video side file there. I was literally exporting that when we had our power thing happen another time. But let me see if I can get the right clip queued up. I believe this is it, and let's see how this goes.
This is probably the most requested video I've gotten since I started doing this channel, which is to say, Pete, where the hell do you keep all your comic books? So without further ado, let me show you Pete's garage. All right, so here we go. This is it. And let's flip over and let's watch where the comic books are stored. So this isn't where I keep my good comic books. Those are kept in very special places in the house and babied like you can't believe. But the vast majority of comic books are kept here in these drawer boxes, in these library-style aisles here. Let me flip around and show you the main one. We've done, coming down here, this is through Quantum and Woody through the end of Z. It just goes on and on, doesn't it? And let me flip around here. What I did on the center aisle is I actually put the comic book boxes back to back so that I could get more in the same space and have the ability to pull them out as needed to get to them. So you see how we've got these back to back like this. This is the numbers through A right over here and going down to about FO down at the end there. Over on the right, these are magazines. I've got these in separate drawer boxes. They make a magazine-style drawer box. I believe it also handles records, but this one I don't stack as high. They're a little taller to start with, and I'm not that tall of a dude. But the other thing is magazines can be incredibly weighty, especially when you get to things like that are printed on glossy paper, like say Playboy magazine. I even try to move those to the bottom when I can, just because the box itself is just heavy as hell. Boxes on average weigh about 50 pounds, so when you look at all the comic books in the collection here, we're talking about 8 tons worth of comics. Now, one problem I had, and this is the thing that started the whole video off, is that the drawer boxes are fantastic. They really do an amazing job. What it is it's a comic book box that comes with a shell around it. So what the shell does is it supports the weight of the stack around it so that you can just go to any comic book box in the stack, pull on it, and just lift it out like a filing cabinet. Now, this is terrific, except that it falls apart if there's any kind of shearing force on the stack. So if you notice these ones, they form these nice, clean lines going down like this, and that means the compression force is distributed on this one, and these boxes are very, very sturdy against compression. But where they fall apart is when you get what's called shearing force, when things are pressed at an angle and it wants to split off. There, cardboard has basically no resistance to shearing force, and the whole thing falls to pieces. Now, what had happened to us over here is these boxes, some of them are 20 years old almost, have been living very comfortably in my offices throughout, San Jose. They move out here to Tennessee. But as soon as I got them out to Tennessee, they started just falling to pieces. And I couldn't understand why, because the very same comic boxes were doing great, elsewhere. And what was happening is that my garage floor itself, it took me a while to figure this out, is at an angle. So if you look at what I've done here, is I built decking. This is a 4x4 with 3/4 inch plywood used as decking. It starts out flush on the floor in the corner there. As you see when I start moving down, it's very hard to see, but it's actually shimmed underneath. But when we get down to about this point, it's actually shimmed by the whole 3/4 inches of another piece of plywood. So we've dropped almost an inch by the time we get to the first 8-foot section. And then going beyond that, we have to start with, the 3/4 inch drop, move down, which by the time you get to the second 8-foot section, you've actually got all that underneath holding it all up and keeping it level. So we've actually dropped about 2 inches or so by the time you get to the end of the whole thing. Now, one thing I did to keep things from tipping over before is I built these cages. Basically, it's a 4x4 structure, which is just there almost as a bookend. And what it's meant to do is just keep it so if these ones on the end here ever did want to shift, that it would keep them from just shearing and splitting the whole thing off. That was a good idea, but when it's dealing with basically a 2.5 inch drop by the end of the garage, the whole thing was just canted all the way. And as a result, over time, the ones on the bottom just started collapsing in. Now these have largely been replaced, and the ones that had been really degraded have largely been moved up the stack so they can support the weight now. But you can see when we get to here, this is a box that maybe at some point I'll need to replace. You see how it's bulged down the side there? It started to peel away. Now at the moment, the box is still opens and closes just fine. But when these were at the bottom, when the whole thing was at an angle, especially some of the older boxes, you couldn't open the bottom box. As a result, it would rip the box in half, you would destroy the whole thing. And over time, I just had to mark those spots as unused. Now, some of the things that the folks over at Collection Drawer have done to make this whole thing better, and number one, put them on a level surface. But another problem with comic boxes when you're pulling them out like this is it used to be that when I went to pull something at the top, it would want to take the whole box and shell with it. And so I couldn't just pull this box and get to what was inside of it because the whole thing would want to slide down top of me. To solve this, they invented this thing called a box lock. You can see them here on the end here. It's a little plastic, tab, which they put in on both sides of the box, right there and there. I'll show you what those look like here in a minute. I'll walk over to this side and show you a package of them. It's a fun little gizmo. Let me go ahead and get a couple of these out. Here, I've got a couple out here right now. So what this is, a little tab that looks like this. And when you put one on one side of the box, get my thumb out of the way of the camera, put one on one side of the box and shove it in, and it clicks in and meets the other one like that. The two tabs lock in place on each other. You'll hear, click, click, click. And it forms a strong enough bond so that these boxes aren't going to want to move without their buddy next to them. Now, it does a couple of things that's really good. Number one, it solves the whole tipping problem of pulling out the upper story boxes. That problem largely went away with the lower boxes because this one isn't going to want to pull out with it no matter what because it's got the weight of the box on top of it holding in. But without something like that, we used to just in the old days tape rows of boxes together just to keep them from pulling up on top of us when we went to pull a box. This is a much better solution. The other thing we found though over time is that the boxes that we had box locked together just wore so much better over time than the ones without them, because it would strengthen, it really wanted to keep this bond between boxes together, and so it prevented that bulging and collapsing problem over time. to a much higher degree than without them. So if you are going to do collection drawer boxes, I absolutely would suggest doing the box locks. Back over to the other side here, and let me show you what the inside of these comic book boxes looks like. So one thing that we really pay a lot of attention to is, file comic books away. It's not just about filing the comic book, it's about being able to get to it later on. So let's say I just got an order on Atomic Avenue for Aliens Volume 2, some comic book in there. I just walk over here. Every box has a label. This is the first title in the box through the last title in the box. So Aliens falls in between Akugan, Brutalizer of Gods, and the all-new Adam. So pull this guy out. As you can see, I am a big, big fan of title dividers. We put a title divider between everything that we do. There's actually an option in ComicBase when you're printing, when you add issues by barcode, to automatically print new title dividers for any new series. We absolutely do that. Now, a couple things about this. So, first of all, just to demonstrate why I do it, there's about 240 comics in this box, give or take. And if math is right, and I suspect it is, if all I knew was that this was box, what does it make it, box number 6 in my collection, so even had I gone and I said Aliens Volume 2 is in box 6, well, if that's all I knew, I would have to look through an average of 110 comics in order to find Aliens Volume 2 number 4, as it turns out. Instead,
by the way,
all I got to do to find Aliens Volume 2, I guess number 3 is all I have, is I literally flip over here, I look down for Aliens, I see the title divider, I flip it over, and I'm holding it, that quickly. So with this kind of idea, just because everything is alphabetized within the title, and the whole collection is alphabetized, and everything's kept in order, I can lay my hands on any comic book in this entire 57,000 comic collection in about 30 seconds. Maybe 40 if I'm feeling a little slower from carrying a lot of other things. Other things to notice about this whole thing, though. First of all, you'll see that these title dividers come from a vast range of ages. Some of these are like the original ones, Alex and Ada, probably date back to 1992, and you can see how yellow the title divider is during that time. Another thing that's worth noting, however, is notice how Alex and Ada is still, it's razor sharp, it's black text. This was laser printed back in the day before I switched to using thermal. I switched to thermal because it's so much more convenient to print individual labels, but the real advantage of laser printed labels is that the ink lasts forever. Whereas if I look at Alice Sin, Dead Wonderland, you see how it's faded a little bit? This label's probably 10-15 years old, and they do fade over time, particularly if they're exposed to a lot of heat. So even without that, though, you do need to worry about that is a limit of thermal labels. So I've made the decision that, by and large, thermal labels, the convenience factor still outweighs it. So when I'm printing new things, that's what I print. That being said, though, it is worth noting that that is a limit of the process, and you might make a separate decision for your title divider labels, particularly if you want to get to them. Other things that are a bane of my existence. So if we look back at Alex and Ada over here, you notice how it's a little bit shorter than all the ones around it. Not so bad right here because there's a big gap between it and the next title. But let's look over at our friend Aliens Volume 2. Well, the next title over that is Aliens Hive. Where is it? It should be between Aliens Volume 2 and Aliens Rescue. Yeah, it's down here. It's this little tiny short one. And because it's short, it just gets obscured entirely. I can't see it whatsoever. I've made the decision 3 years ago that when we pull the last comic of any of these old style short dividers we do, this divider label doesn't get reused, this title divider doesn't get reused, it just gets chucked. And we replace them all with the new higher title dividers. Whatever you do, do the same thing everywhere. I personally think that for this sort of filing system, the tall title dividers is the way to go. But whatever you do, do the same thing every single time, because otherwise it's going to drive you absolutely around the bend. Oh, hey, one more thing before we leave the garage here. I want to talk about overall loading of boxes. So, for instance, if you want to know how full should I stuff a box, basically it comes down to, with the box closed, you should basically stick your finger in until it hits about your second knuckle, right about there. That basically gives you enough so that there's plenty of room to add more things to the box, but it's not so many things that the box is likely, the contents are likely to tip over and actually bend the comic books inside. All right, last thing is you'll notice how all the boxes start with, the first title and they go to the last title. Within that, on the other hand, very important, not only do you have title dividers, but you have issue labels for everything in the whole section. So for instance, this is Green Arrow 7th series, right? I absolutely guarantee you are the only person on Earth who files this knows this is Green Arrow. When I look at something, this is Green Arrow with a 4 on it. That's Green Arrow 7th series, number 4, variation A. You know that the moment you're filing it. Future you absolutely will not know that. So that's why it's so important to have this divider, this identification label, put it front and center, right in the middle there, right along the top, so you can let your fingers do the walking. If I need to pull issue number 22 or something like that, I just go down like this, and I could find it in just a couple of seconds. There we are, good to go. And it takes all the guesswork out of the whole thing. It makes filing and unfiling so very much faster. People have also asked me about these Avery label printers. Now these ones here have been absolutely ancient. They've been around for probably 15 years or so in the company. And so you can find these ones, the Dymo label writers, the 330, 400 series, 450s, turbo or not, for about 30 to 50 bucks on eBay. I would absolutely advise, if you're going to have these, buy the older versions. Don't buy the 500 series, the 500, 550 series, because that series, they sort of did this like the Keurig K-Cups, is they copy protected it so they only work with official Dymo labels. They won't work with the much cheaper labels you can get off Amazon from third parties, and so your cost per label goes way up if you buy the new Dymos. And honestly, there are no new features that I've seen that would justify wanting to lock yourself in that way. So find yourself a used one or an old one off eBay. That's really the way to go on these. All right, I'm trying to think if there's anything else worth mentioning about the collection right now. I'm going to go ahead, move out here, put the garage door down. One thing worth noting is, so I've talked about it just a little while ago, in an insulated garage door. This was one of the best things I ever did. And what that does is allows me to put this garage door down, and the garage maintains its temperature. So all this comic filing space comes to me as part of my house, and the reason it stays climate controlled is because I just leave that door open. That's all I got to do.
Okay, and I think that will do it. Let me go ahead and remove that, and we're back. Hopefully that worked. That's the first time I ever tried presenting a video on screen to people, but hopefully that worked for folks as far as doing that kind of content. Some questions that came up. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh yeah, so they're talk about the box locks, the 6 holes on the sides of the boxes. I don't think I have a picture of that real easily to pull up, but yeah, there's a bit of an art to that if you are putting them together. First of all, do it. I typically, when we're assembling new boxes, or if I were doing it all over again, I'd put them together in groups of at least 4 each. And I would do my entire stack that way, of groups of at least 4. Along the top, if you can put as many as possible together, just to weld the whole thing together. That's definitely the way to go. A couple of things. The way you do it is with brand new boxes, it's not too hard. You basically take one end, shove it through till you can see it from inside the second one, and then sort of click it together. No big deal to do those if you're dealing with brand new boxes. Now, if you're dealing with old weathered boxes, then it gets a little bit more challenging, but it still can be done. But I would actually do it exactly that way. And when you hear like 3 clicks, you're in place. Now they have 6 positions on a long box. There's front, middle, and back. The way I do it myself is I'll do the front and the middle, just by putting my hands in there, and then I'll take the entire stack, flip it over, and then I'll do the back. I mean, try to do the stick your hands in 2 feet in and do the back is nuts. You're right, Steve. That would actually make you crazy. But what you do is you do all that before you put in. There's actually a stiffener that goes inside the shell, which gives it additional structural strength. You do all that stuff. You lay it out ahead of time, and then you put them together. They've done some tweaks to the design of the drawer boxes over the years, which is kind of interesting because we had like drawer box version 1.0, and you can see some of those boxes are like really genuinely old. I gotta think, has it been 20 some years now? I think it may well have been, since we bought our first drawer box from Rich over at the Collection Drawer Company. But yeah, some of those are still in service, as you could see. But the original ones actually didn't have the space for the box locks. He hadn't thought of them yet, and so we actually had to, get out a power drill and a template and drill the holes for those. That was silly. But one of the other things he's done over the years, which is it's good and it's bad, is he's figured out that the tabs at the back, which keep the whole thing together at the end of a shell. Originally, he had tabs that pulled out in the same orientation as the force of the drawer being put in and out, which he figured out over time causes those to pop out, a lot. So the way he solved that is he put in the locking tab at the back is now at a 90-degree angle, and that's great. It absolutely works, and they never pop out. That's terrific. On the other hand, it makes it damn near impossible to lock that tab once you've got them box locked together. So that one is a little fiddly right now. I have never found an elegant solution for it other than to just finesse it in bit by bit as you go. But if Rich is seeing the video and wants to comment on that one, I'll certainly pass on his comments. All right, let's see here. Other things going on. Who is that we refer to? He said. Yeah. So how do you get help to say, hi, I need you to help me move about 6,000 pounds of comic boxes. I need it all done in a day before the rain comes. Because we also had to. We were playing with a forecast that intermittently all week long had called for rain, and all week long had been nothing but bright and sunny, and so it was really pissing us off. So we had to clear the driveway, move everyone's cars, do all the stuff, and get the whole thing set up. Get the labeling station, the whole 9 yards. It had to be a real big group project, and the way I did it, honestly, is I went to Nextdoor, which is kind of like local Facebook, and I said, yeah, looking for some help to move, 250-pound boxes in and out of a thing. I will pay you the greater of either 25 an hour or $200 for the day, whichever one winds up being more, and I will provide lunch and snacks and things like that. And I got a lot of people calling for replies instantly for the whole thing. And so I chose a couple of people. They were really good guys. And they also had the rare life skill of being able to, when I said, hey, why don't you give me a call to discuss the project so I know that you know what you're getting into? They actually managed to pick up a phone and dial a number, which apparently is something that just eludes a lot of people these days. But yeah, no, it was good. And in the end, I had to turn down like 9 other folks who wanted to in on the job. So that wasn't too bad of a job if you need that done. Let's see. Checking for damages. I'm not sure what that's about, but okay. All right. All right. Let's see. ComicBase TV. Do you have room to park your car? No, not even close. That's just something I gave up. I looked at a number of houses that were lovely that had 3 and 4 car garages and things like that I could have moved into, but other factors like schools and things like that. The wife gets a vote on this stuff too. It's not just about where I want to put the comics. So as a result, we've been parking our cars in the driveway for 9 years, and so that's where that's at. We still keep on thinking about building a second building to use as offices and space like that. But honestly, I think it depends on how hiring shapes up at the company and things like that. I mean, we got partway into the drafting project for that plan before COVID hit, and then we've kind of been rethinking a lot of things, like I think a lot of companies have since then. Since we were virtual way before then, but now the whole world's gone virtual. One thing that I want to do is get less virtual. I actually really enjoy working with people and dropping in and whiteboarding ideas and things like that. So we would like a place to do that more in the Tennessee place like we used to have back in San Jose. And sadly, it hasn't quite come together yet, but we're thinking on it. So, but yeah, I'm thinking the car parking thing will happen when I figure out the new office thing. So that's a thing. Department of Comics pointed out the labels are great for those darn Virgin covers too. Absolutely. It's just I hate to say it, but just ID labels, the policy has been that every single thing that comes through here gets an ID label. The way we handle that in ComicBase is just we add by issue. We check the box at the bottom of the add by barcode screen, and we say, show select, show items after adding, and that gives us a big list of everything. After we bleep everything in with the barcode scanner, it gives us a big list of everything we've just added. It automatically prints new divider labels for anything that needs it, and those roll off automatically. And then after that, we hit Control A, and we hit to select all, F6 to print ID labels for everything that was on the that we just added, and those roll off in the order that we scan them, which is really handy, because then as soon as we bagged and board them, we literally, as fast as we can pull them off the labels, we stick them on there, and then they get filed, and it's a piece of cake. When the filing system is working, it's a thing of beauty. People were talking to me about a month and a half ago and say, hey, when are you gonna show us your comics and everything? Like, I can't show it to you now. It just makes me sad, because enough things had broken down, and I had piles of comics that weren't filed laying around, and it was a mess. It was starting to look like everybody's crummy comic book back room, and I hate living that way. It's just everything in your life slows down when your comics aren't filed. It's like you'll get an Atomic Avenue order, and it'll be like, okay, great, I'm gonna pull this one, this one, this one, and I can't find this one, and maybe it's over in that stack of 400 unfiled comic books. Let me look through an average of 200 comic books in order to find one comic. This is madness. Who has time to live this way? And then there'd be some boxes, especially again, am I a little bit neurotic about My Little Pony and Miles Morales Spider-Man? Yes, I'm not a fan so much, because those are the comic books we're required to buy one each of, and it seems that nobody ever buys them. And so the MI through MY boxes just got stuffed to the freaking gills. The weird thing is that Marvel Adventures, Marvel Previews, Marvel Worlds, those things would clear out, especially during COVID. But in order to make space in the over shoved in MI section, it would involve shuffling the contents of 25 boxes backward in order to keep alphabetical order, and it just was just madness. And so stuff was just piling up. I gotta say though, since we did the job, the last week of comic filing has been a pleasure. It's just, you walk over, you pull a box, you touch maybe 2-3 places in the whole thing, and you either file or pull the issue you're looking for. You're done in seconds. It's absolutely the way to go. But man, oh man, did that move. Chris asks, how do you shift the collection when a box in the middle fills up faster than the neighboring boxes? Yeah, it's this is where the knuckle thing comes in. If you give, so if you're talking about second knuckle, you're talking about 2 to 3 inches of space in each box when you load it initially. It gives you a really good grounding overall, until you get to about 6 or 7 inches. So think about a comic book is basically 10 inches tall. You can handle about 6 inches of space, maybe a little less, of blank space in a box before you have a risk of things tipping over and bending the comic book that's in the back or in the front. You don't want to do that, because at that point you've just quartered the value of that comic book, and that's terrible. There are things that Collection Drawer makes. They're like little rails that sit along this middle of the box, where you actually can drop a they figured out how to use the spare space in their drawers. They basically made little tabs where you can rip one of those off, put it into one of these rail systems. I think they call them box rails or something, and then make inside the box, make subdividing catalogs should you ever have a box that's getting too empty. I find that has not generally been a problem for me. The rare time it has happened, I sit there and I say, well, this would be a good box to stick my welding helmet in, or something that just happens to take up 10 inches or 12 inches of space at the back. But that honestly has not been my main problem. My main problem has been, what do you do when the boxes get too busy? And when they get too full, then what you do is you pull out the box that's next to it, you shuffle a little bit out of the back into the front of the previous box, lather, rinse, and repeat until you've got a fairly well-distributed range of 5 boxes or so that are okay again, until things go in there. And then if you're feeling particularly creative, you sit there and say, hey, time to have a sale on My Little Ponies on Atomic Avenue, and hope that some brony comes along and grabs them all from you. It has not happened for me since, but I keep hoping. All right. Let's see here. And Steve answered the same kind of idea. All right. Okay, Brian says the pre-recorded video came across well. Excellent. Volume in the pre-recorded video is noticeably lower than the live video. Yeah, it's another thing I noticed, and I didn't have a chance to fix this. Sorry, I was attempting to work with this a little bit right before the showtime, and we clocked out of time, unfortunately. But is I also noticed that when you flip between the front camera and the back camera, it just dramatically changes where the video volume is, and it takes a while to reassert itself. But hey, first try, we gave it a go. All right, let's see here. Department of Economics says, when are you going to show us the good stuff? Never. No, it's my Nazi gold, my priceless Monets, my rare doubloons, things like that. No, they're things a man should keep to himself, and it's like you also don't get to see the moon base or the underground lair. Sorry, but you got to see the garage, so we had that go for us. All right, let's see here. Brian Price says, well, I would have thought there'd be more demand for My Little Pony. The bronies must all have subscriptions or pull lists. Oh, wow. Yeah, no, if they're still doing BronyCon, and I do have, well, at the time, a teenage daughter or tween-age daughter. So not me, but my wife has been dragged to a pony convention once. And even I'm an open-minded, pop culture savvy kind of funky guy, and even I'm sitting there going like, yeah, I'll be at the bookstore. I just sorry, there's certain things that they're beyond where I want to go. But had I gone and had comics to sell, I'll bet you I could have moved a crap ton. Anyway, let's see here. Yes, I do keep the very good comics in Mylar, etc. Yeah, it's so in terms of comic bagging and such like that, the reason, all right, so putting a comic book in a bag does a lot of stuff for it, right? It protects it against handling, it that kind of rubbing that happens. If you guys have ever gone to a comic store where you have a retailer who just has the unbagged, unboarded comic books in there, and you'll notice that if they've been sitting there for any length of time whatsoever, he might have put in them brand new off the stacks. Within 3 months, they're all going to have rub marks all over them. They'll have degraded to best case F+ condition within a period of months, just from people looking at them and rubbing ink and things like that. So all that stuff gets ameliorated the second you put it in a plastic bag. You lose, corners don't bend as easily. You stop getting all sorts of little minor damage. You put a backing board in there as well with it, and you've done a lot to help that comic book. At that point, the only thing that's probably going to do it is corner damage, unless you really have somebody really vindictive going on. But when you talk about Mylar versus polypropylene, as far as what the bag is made of, what you're talking about there is really acidification, which is a very slow process. Well, it's like bankruptcy. It's slow until it's fast. So for the first 20, 30 years of a comic's life, if it's stored in polypropylene with a buffered backing board, which is to say a backing board that's pH neutral or maybe even a little bit more than that in terms of having a base rather than alkaline composition. What you've got then is a container in which the newsprint isn't going to want to degrade particularly fast. Newsprint, when it degrades, you've all seen very old books, things like that, where it turns cream, then tan, then brown, then it just falls into pieces, right? It's if you see 100-year-old books, it's rare to see them in a way that you could actually turn the pages and not have some piece of the page fall out in your hand. Newsprint in general, which is what comic books used to be printed on, is the worst, crappiest paper that is known to man. When the 80s came around and they started going from 60-cent comic books till suddenly the unbelievable buck and a quarter and buck 50 comic books, they also use that as an excuse to switch out of newsprint. Do you guys remember Bando paper? But what they did is they switched to a paper which had two really good properties going for it. Three. One, it had superior whiteness. And so in other words, it didn't start out kind of half grayish brown just to start with. So if you ever seen unprocessed newsprint, like a brand new newspaper fresh off the presses, is actually kind of gray. It's not white, it's gray. So whenever you see one that's very white, you know that I'm looking at a photo restoration. It doesn't look like a new, like an actual newspaper. Same thing goes for an old comic book. If you actually saw like a brand new copy of Action Comics when it came off the stands, it does not look at all like the facsimile editions that we're getting today, because the paper itself was completely screwed up just to start with. It's funny. I saw that they'd done a recent reproduction of either Detective 27 or Batman #1, where they actually printed it on paper that mimicked the original paper. And it's funny because it looks completely like hell, but it looks completely more believable than the modern reprints. But anyway, one of the things about newsprint, other than it starts out very gray and is off colored just to start with, is it also is fairly acidic to start with if you actually did take a pH reading on it. And so it wants to break down very quickly. I mean, if you actually took a newspaper, laid it out in the sun for like a month, the thing would be in pieces. It doesn't take much for those things to degrade. So it was very important for acidity levels, especially with old comic books, to keep them as non-acid as possible, which the gold standard of that is Mylar. Mylar is an inert plastic. It doesn't break down. It doesn't become acidic at all. Whereas other plastics, as they decompose, slowly tip towards the acidic scale. Now, it's a process that, if it's not exposed to a lot of heat, takes decades. But if you've got something that's very valuable, very old, you really want to do everything you can to preserve it, Mylar is the way to go. Downside, Mylar starts at like 50 cents a bag. I mean, they make things like My Lights, which are a little bit cheaper, but Mylar comic books are a bit of an investment. And let's admit what needs to be admitted about them. They're kind of a pain in the butt. Mylar comic bags typically they're more rigid, so they don't fold over, they don't bend over, you can't tape them closed and do all the normal things like that. That's part of one of the things that My Lights attempts to do. So they actually don't make for a particularly pretty package. They look better than a raw comic book. They look less good than a bagged and boarded polypropylene comic book, but it's, they're, like I say, they're a little bit of a pain in the butt. They're kind of like the early version of a slab. Slabs in theory are also inert. I don't know that anyone's ever chemically tested this, but in theory that's what you're getting when you get a slab. So but that being said, if you've got tons and tons and tons of comic books like that, honestly, we have customers who feel this way, where they have literally everything they touch goes into Mylar, whether it's My Lights or full-on archival Mylar. And I respect that. That's great. And I don't do it. It's, but that's because I honestly, most of the things that are in my collection, I hope not to have in 40, 50, 100 years. Something that is something I want to keep for 40, 50, 100 years, that one goes into Mylar. So that's where that is. All right, let's see here. By the way, time for announcements. PSAs. Yes, fortunately, fewer PSAs than Pete has comics. Number one, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It does help us. And also, if you leave a comment, it turns out engagement is the key to, virality and all the things that YouTube likes to have. Well, don't forget also we have message boards over at forums.comicbase.com, as well as a dedicated thread for live stream topics. So don't forget about that. As finally, the torrent link for Andre's world's famous comic cover catalog is available there. So if you want to know what 1.1 million comic books look like arranged on a page and printed out, well, that'll let you know. And let me see here. Oh, and don't forget to check out Atomic Avenue and ComicBase Powered Venue for the ComicBase Powered Venue for buying and selling comics, books, magazines, and newspapers. And oh wait, our mateys, don't forget to hoist your mizzenmast, swap your poop deck, and have a bit of rum on Friday, because September 19th be International Talk Like a Pirate Day. Yes, by the way, what's pirates? A favorite part about writing compilers? Parsing arguments. Okay, if you're a geek, you'll get it. Anyway, moving on. Okay, let me see here. The question about what is used to keep comic books upright may be a good forum topic, more space to describe. Yeah, it's I'll dig up what the box divider is. I mean, that's like the nice industrial style solution for doing this one. Basically what it does is it adds rails along the side of the comic box. It also adds a tiny amount of weight, and I gotta say, I did it once or twice. It's enough for me to know that the concept works, And I also know, just in my own collection and just how comics move in and out of my collection, it's not been a big problem for me. It's if a box, like if someone goes and this has happened, buys 100 copies of Marvel previews from me, and so suddenly I have half a box that's empty. Pretty easy for me to redistribute that space to the 4 or 5 adjoining boxes and buy them a little bit more space and make it so no box is too empty. But having a box that's too empty is actually can be a problem for people. Too full is a worse problem. Let me see what else we got. Yeah, where's my Action Comics #1 and Action Amazing Fantasy 15? The reprints are right in the stacks. They're right under A for Action. By the way, one thing that's really funny is one of the boxes that came out of this one, because we were putting new labels on things, is I have one box that if you looked at the label, you'd think this is the best box on the planet. It starts with Action Comics. It ends with Adventure Comics. And if you're thinking that if that's everything in the box, wow, this is going to be the most valuable box on the planet. My God, will you be disappointed if you actually open that box? All right, let's see here. Yeah, the message was just shifting boxes one book at a time just stinks. Yeah, you can do that too. It depends on whether your problem is too much or too little. Like I say, in general, my problem has generally been things like Moon Knight and My Little Pony are getting way too full, and damn it, the first box I've got around with any amount of extra space in it is like 10 boxes away. That gets to be a real problem, and at some point then it becomes like okay, time to take things out and reshuffle and get it done with. The good news is you get it done, it's 20 minutes of pain, and then it's not a problem for you for 6 to 8 months. So depends on where your stuff comes in. All right, Mando paper, Baxter paper. Yep. Okay. And Ariel says Mila has been my choice for over 30 years. Excellent. Let's see. Brian Price says the slabs, grading slabs, some kind of polyester, not completely inert like Mylar, but very close. Yeah, I think they're also supposed to have some kind of anti-UV coating on them so that they resist exposing the paper too much if you put them out on display. Again, I don't have something that I'm inclined to test that with. Never been a big slab guy myself, which we've covered to all manner of things. My really nice comics are just in Mylar. That's all I got to say about that. All right, and let me see here. Any update on the app? You'll be hearing some very quickly. And any chance of getting a few more custom check boxes? Would be very useful is let us know what you want to use the check boxes for, and we'll see if maybe, because it's come up in the past, and sometimes there's a way of getting where you want to go using a different field. For instance, one guy wanted to say, do you want to have a field which designates, is this signed, is this not signed, is it autographed, is it there are like 5 different things you wanted to indicate, and you could do that with 5 different checkboxes. Or if they're all kind of related fields, you also could just have assign codes to another field and do it in that one. But that might be the way to go. Realistically, for the next version of ComicBase, we are locked in as far as the features. So we're getting awfully close to the end of summer, which is our target ship date. So yeah, you're not going to see major changes in the program that we have coming up at this point. That being said, we want to hear what you think after you see it, and we'll take it from there, because every year is a new year, and we take it from there. All right, let's see here. Yeah, so inserting the box is easy, but where do the boxes on top go? Like I say, I have a pretty good gauge at this point of how my load goes, so I'm not usually trying to just insert a rando box in with things. I have had times in the past where, if you guys remember the early explosion of Lady Deaths and Grim Fairy Tale stuff, they came out of nowhere, and suddenly there were like 2 or 3 boxes of that stuff in our collection, which just came out at absolutely nowhere. And there have been times in our comic world where, yeah, it's A through N over here, and then it's O through Z over in the other room, and Lady Death and Grim Fairy Tales is behind the counter over there. We have had times where we've had to sort of break it up that way. It's not fun. I'm always a much happier guy when everything's in one place. You never have to ask where a box is, because it just makes sense. It's in alphabetical order. But with that said, you're going to do the best if you keep things. It's all about the number of touch points within the box. If a box is unsorted, like I'll make the numbers easy because apparently I blew it when I was trying to do this. Let's just say bag to board, let's say you've got 200 books in there. That means on average you're going to go through 100 books in order to find any particular thing if you don't know that it's in any kind of order. Now, if you know that it's sorted by title, right? So now I'm going to have, say, Amazing Spider-Man and Avengers in the box. Well, then once I found Amazing Spider-Man or I found Avengers, well, then I only have to look in a couple places. I don't need to look in the whole box. And if my Amazing Spider-Man is sorted and my Avengers is sorted, well, then even though there's 200 comics in the box, it's actually mathematically guaranteed, if I know it's in order, that I can get to any given comic in that box within 7 touches. It winds up being just the log of the number of the things if you know it's in sorted order. Same thing goes with if you put title dividers in, then I don't need to suddenly search the entire box or something. I only need to search the thing between one title divider and the next title divider. That becomes my entire search space. So even if it wasn't sorted, I go there, but I also can just literally, I don't touch anything at all. I literally can just look down the box and say like, oh yeah, Grim Fairy Tales presents, Wonderland, blah, blah, blah. And I literally just touch one thing. I flip 2 or 3 comic books with my fingers till I get it, and I can pull any comic book out of it. It's a big investment in plastic. There's an investment in labeling, and because comics move both in and out of our collection pretty regularly, I would not do it any other way. The thing that surprised me about ID labels in particular, though, is how much faster it made filing. Because it would make pulling things faster, but it made filing things quite a bit faster. The time, even though it requires some time to stick, print the labels out and stick them on the books, dwarfed by the amount of time it saved. Because I back when we were all in one office, I was paying someone to do the filing, and so I'm sitting there going like, okay, I'm giving the comics over to Jill to file now. It's like, how long is it going to take? And yeah, I'm the boss, and so I'm kind of like, I'm mentally kind of clocking. Okay, when did she start? When did she end? And what did that just cost me? And you're kind of thinking, okay, now how do I take a few minutes off of this one? And so you're always kind of think, how do we make this faster? Because this is dumb, unfun, heavy work. I don't like doing this work. No one else likes doing this work. And so if I can do less of this work or make the work go faster, then I pay less and I'm less unhappy with life. And so I'm always really, really motivated to make the filing process just as efficient as I possibly can make it. And so that's why if I can invest in, drawer boxes, or I can invest in labels, or I can invest in systems that make the whole thing go faster, I'm absolutely going to do this all day long, because the payoff is perpetual, or at least until the drawer boxes degrade on you or do something like that, at which point it almost certainly means like call rich and get more drawer boxes. But it's honestly, I'm actually pretty pleased with their longevity. For something that's not made out of steel, those things have done amazingly well. Once we solve the whole they have to be level thing, because man, oh man, a little bit of shearing force apparently goes a damn long way as far as destroying those things. Let's see here. And we had some talk about moving drawers. I think we probably got it for today. All right, well, guys, thank you so much. And I'm gonna probably reach out to Rich over at Collection Drawer, and I'll try to put his contact details in the clip on this one. Hope this was useful to folks. Hopefully it helps someone. And if you saw some ideas, or if you see some ideas of something I can be doing better, let me know. It's not quite as much of a commercial for Collection Drawer as it would be nice if these were all brand new boxes that hadn't been around for 20 years, it would look a little prettier. So, Rich, if you're watching, I apologize for that. That being said, your system works. And honestly, I could not do a collection this size without you. It would have required infinite numbers of either bookshelves or filing cabinets or something like that in order to do the same thing. So for something that's made out of cardboard and is quite affordable, all things considered, I think the Collection Drawers are freaking phenomenal. But you do have to work within their limits. And one of their limits is you cannot have these things have shearing force on them. So that's the lesson we learned, and we paid for it. But that being said, really glad this job is done. So I'm really going to enjoy my fall where the filing is easy. So that's about it, guys. I'll see you on the next one. And it's probably going to cold open out because it seems like everything got screwed up on the control, but we're going to try it. All right, take care. Bye-bye.